The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Chen Wei stepped up to speak. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the plain blue uniform of the Terran Federation. Around her, hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows of seats that stretched up toward the domed ceiling. Chen Wei looked around the chamber slowly. She saw the tall, proud Zephyrians with their golden skin and bright feathers. The gray-skinned Nexari sat in perfect rows, their large black eyes watching her with cold interest. The furry Thakari chattered quietly among themselves. Dozens of other species filled the great room, representing worlds scattered across the galaxy. Fellow council members, Chen Wei began, her voice calm and clear. I come before you today with an important message from Earth and all human colonies. Chairman Vextar, a Zephyrian with especially bright golden feathers, leaned forward in his high seat. His voice echoed through the chamber. The council recognizes Ambassador Chen Wei of the Terran Federation. Please speak. Chen Wei nodded politely. Thank you, Chairman. After much thought and discussion, humanity has decided to withdraw from the Galactic Council. This decision is final and will take effect immediately. A wave of surprised sound swept through the chamber. The Thakari chittered loudly. Several Nexari turned their heads to look at each other with their large, unblinking eyes. Other species began talking at once. Chairman Vextar raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Chen Wei, this is very sudden. What has caused this decision? Perhaps we can discuss any problems and find solutions. Chen Wei shook her head gently. There are no problems to solve, Chairman. No demands to make. No negotiations needed. We simply choose to return to our own space and manage our own affairs. The Drakmari ambassador, a lizard-like being with dark green scales, stood up. But what about our trade agreements? Our research projects? The defense partnerships? All existing agreements will be honored completely, Chen Wei replied. Every trade contract will be finished as promised. All research data will be given to our partners with full instructions. Human workers will complete their current jobs before leaving. A Catharian delegate, who looked like a large insect with 6 arms, clicked nervously. What about the stations you built? The mining operations? The medical centers? Chen Wei smiled slightly. We will leave them all behind with complete operating manuals translated into your languages. Everything we built together will remain for you to use. The chamber erupted in confused voices. This was not how these things usually happened. When species left the council, there were angry speeches. There were threats and demands. There were attempts to take technology or destroy what could not be taken. The humans were doing none of these things. Chairman Vextar called for order again. Ambassador, surely you must have reasons. Has the council offended humanity in some way? Are there economic concerns? Military threats? No offenses have been taken, Chen Wei said calmly. No threats worry us. We simply believe it is time for humanity to follow its own path. She paused and looked around the chamber one more time. Her eyes seemed to rest on each group of aliens for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer but somehow more serious. We thank you for the years of cooperation. We wish you all peace and prosperity. Goodbye. Chen Wei turned and walked toward the exit. Her small group of human advisors followed quietly behind her. They did not look back. The chamber remained silent until the humans were gone. Then everyone began talking at once. Over the next 3 days, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. Every human ship, station, and settlement outside the Sol system began packing up. The process was orderly and calm. Human workers finished their shifts, said goodbye to alien colleagues, and boarded transport ships. On the mining station orbiting Kepler 442, human engineers spent their last day training Zephyrian replacements on the safety systems. They left behind detailed manuals and spare parts for every machine. In the research labs on Proxima Centauri B, human scientists carefully packaged their work and handed it over to Nexari partners. They explained every experiment and showed their colleagues how to continue the projects. On the frontier worlds near the galactic rim, human patrol ships finished their routes one last time. They turned over sensor data and patrol schedules to Thakari commanders before heading home. Everywhere, the departure was the same. Polite, professional, and complete. The humans took only personal belongings and their own ships. Everything else was left behind with careful instructions. The aliens watched in bewilderment. This was not how angry departures worked. Where were the threats? Where was the sabotage? Where were the attempts to steal technology or destroy what could not be taken? Some tried to convince humans to stay. The Catharians offered better trade terms. The Drakmari promised humanity a permanent seat on the Council's ruling committee. Even the proud Zephyrians suggested new agreements that would give humans more respect, but the humans just smiled politely and continued packing. They honored every promise they had made. They completed every job they had started. They trained their replacements carefully and left everything in perfect working order. On the third day, the last human transport ship crossed the boundary of the Sol system. As it passed the orbit of Pluto, something remarkable happened. A massive energy field sprang to life around Earth's solar system. It formed a perfect sphere that stretched far beyond the outermost planets. The field glowed with a soft blue light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The aliens who had been watching the human departure sent probe ships to examine the barrier. The probes passed right through the field without any problems, but when they tried to return, they bounced off like balls hitting a wall. The field worked only one way. Things could go into the Sol system, but nothing could come out unless the humans allowed it. Alien scientists studied the barrier with their best instruments. The technology was completely unknown to them. The energy readings made no sense. It was as if the humans had discovered entirely new laws of physics. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, Chairman Vextar called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all the major species gathered to discuss this strange development. "How did they build such a thing without us knowing?" demanded the Nexari delegate. "Our intelligence networks monitor all major construction projects." "More importantly," added a Drakmari representative, "how does it work? This technology is far beyond anything we've seen from Earth." Chairman Vextar looked troubled. "Perhaps we did not know the humans as well as we thought." The Catharian delegate clicked nervously with all 6 arms. "Should we be concerned? The barrier only keeps others out. It doesn't trap them inside." "True," agreed the Zephyrian chairman, and they left peacefully. No threats were made. Perhaps they simply want to be alone. But privately, many of the council members felt uneasy. The humans had been part of galactic civilization for over 2 centuries. They had seemed like such a normal, unremarkable species, useful enough but not particularly special. Now they had revealed technology that no one else possessed. They had built defenses that no one had detected. They had planned and executed a withdrawal that caught the entire galaxy by surprise. For the first time, some of the alien leaders began to wonder what else they might not have known about their human partners. The humans had exited quietly, leaving behind gifts and good wishes, but they had also left behind questions that no one seemed able to answer. 6 months had passed since the humans disappeared behind their mysterious barrier. The Galactic Council carried on with business as usual, at least on the surface. Chairman Vextar made speeches about how the galaxy was stronger than ever. Trade continued between the remaining species. New agreements were signed, but cracks were beginning to show. The first major problem came from the Kepler Mining Consortium. The operation stretched across 3 star systems and involved 4 different species working together. It had been one of the most successful joint projects in Council history, producing rare metals that every civilization needed. The Zephyrians provided the ships. The Nexari handled logistics and planning. The Catharians brought their skill with complex machinery, and the humans had managed safety systems and engineering support. Or so everyone had thought. Mining Supervisor Caxtel, a Zephyrian with deep golden feathers, stood in the command center of Station Kepler 7 and watched the warning lights flash red across his control board. 3 different alarm systems were screaming at once. "What's the status on Tunnel Complex 12? He called to his Catharian engineer. The insect-like alien's 6 arms moved frantically over his controls. "The support beams are showing stress fractures. The atmospheric processors are running too hot. The extraction equipment is vibrating beyond safe limits." Caxtel felt his feathers dim with worry. These were the same warnings they had been getting for weeks ever since the humans left. The Catharian engineers were skilled, but they kept running into problems they didn't understand. "Can we shut down the section until we figure out what's wrong?" Caxtel asked. "That's the 4th tunnel complex this month," replied the Catharian sadly. "If we shut down any more, the consortium will lose too much money. The Nexari partners are already asking questions." Before Caxtel could respond, a new alarm began blaring. This one was different, deeper, more urgent. His blood turned cold as he recognized the sound. Cave-in alert, the computer announced in a calm voice that somehow made everything worse. Catastrophic structural failure in Tunnel Complex 12. Emergency evacuation protocols activated. The next few hours were a nightmare. Rescue teams rushed to save trapped miners while the tunnel system collapsed around them. Emergency ships flew back and forth carrying the injured to medical stations. The Catharian engineers worked frantically to contain the damage. When it was over, 12,000 miners were dead. The entire Tunnel Complex 12 was destroyed, along with billions of credits worth of equipment. Caxtel stood in the ruins and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans had left detailed manuals for everything. The safety systems were supposed to prevent exactly this kind of disaster. That's when he made a disturbing discovery. The human safety manuals were detailed, but they only covered basic operations. They didn't explain how the deeper systems worked. It was like having instructions for driving a car, but not understanding how the engine ran. The humans had been doing much more than anyone realized. While the other species focused on their specialties, the humans had quietly been managing the complex interactions between all the different systems. They had been preventing problems before they started, making tiny adjustments that kept everything running smoothly. Without them, the delicate balance had collapsed. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting Rigel Prime, Dr. Yiltar was making an even more troubling discovery. The Nexari scientist had been reviewing the medical research data that the humans had left behind. Dr. Yiltar was brilliant, even by Nexari standards. She had 3 advanced degrees and had been studying galactic medicine for over 50 years. But as she read through the human files, she felt increasingly confused. The medical technologies that humans had shared with the galaxy were impressive. They had helped cure diseases, extend lifespans, and improve quality of life for billions of beings. But something seemed wrong with the research notes. The techniques worked perfectly, but the underlying science didn't make complete sense. It was as if the humans had given them recipes without explaining the ingredients. The treatments were effective, but the theories behind them had gaps and inconsistencies. Dr. Yiltar spent weeks digging deeper into the files. Slowly, a disturbing picture emerged. The medical technologies that humanity had shared were not their best work. They were simplified versions, dumbed down for other species to understand and use. Hidden in the deepest files were references to research projects that the humans had never shared. Medical techniques that could regrow entire organs in minutes instead of weeks. Treatments that could extend lifespans far beyond what anyone thought possible. Methods for healing injuries that other species considered permanently disabling. The humans had been giving the galaxy band-aids while keeping the real medicine for themselves, but the most shocking discovery came from the frontier worlds. The Thakari Federation controlled the outer rim of the galaxy, where civilized space met the unknown regions beyond. It was dangerous territory filled with pirates, hostile aliens, and worse things that came from the dark between stars. For 30 years, the rim had been peaceful. Oh, there were small problems. Smugglers, the occasional raider, but nothing major. The Thakari military handled patrol duties with help from other council species, and everything seemed under control. Then the Void Reapers returned. General Thiktar was in his command bunker on Rimworld Station when the first reports came in. The Thakari commander was old enough to remember the terror that these creatures had once brought to the galaxy. The Void Reapers were nomads who traveled in massive black ships that seemed to absorb light. No one knew where they came from originally. They appeared every few generations, swept through inhabited systems like a plague, and then vanished back into the dark spaces between stars. They had been gone for 30 years. Everyone had hoped they were extinct. General, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving distress calls from the Talar system. Multiple ships under attack by unknown vessels." General Thiktar's fur stood on end. Unknown vessels? What do they look like? Black hulls, sir. No visible engines or weapons ports. They seem to absorb our sensor beams. The general's worst fears were confirmed. All ships to battle stations. Send emergency signals to the council. The Void Reapers have returned. The battle was a disaster. The Thakari fleet had been designed to fight pirates and smugglers, not the advanced technology of the Void Reapers. Within hours, half of their ships were destroyed or disabled. Worse, the Reaper technology had improved during their long absence. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful. They had learned new tactics that the Thakari had never seen before. General Thictar retreated to his bunker and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The Rim defenses had been adequate for decades. How had they become so vulnerable so quickly? Then he found the answer in his own military records. For the past 30 years, human ships had been providing routine patrol support along the outer rim. They had called it training exercises and cultural exchange programs. The Thakari had appreciated the help, but hadn't thought much about it. Now he realized the truth. The humans hadn't been helping with patrols. They had been hunting Void Reapers in the dark spaces beyond the rim. They had been fighting a secret war to keep the galaxy safe, and no one had even known about it. Without human ships maintaining pressure on the Reapers, the Nomads had grown strong again. They had time to improve their technology and plan their return. Now they were back with a vengeance, and the galaxy was unprepared. Back in the council chambers, emergency sessions were called almost daily. But without human diplomats to help broker agreements, even simple decisions took forever. The Zephyrians and Nexari argued constantly. The Thakari demanded military support that other species were reluctant to provide. The smaller species formed their own alliances and ignored council authority. Chairman Vextar found himself longing for the quiet efficiency of human negotiators. Ambassador Chen Wei had always seemed so ordinary during council meetings. She rarely spoke up, and when she did, her suggestions seemed obvious and unremarkable. Now he realized that her obvious suggestions had always somehow brought opposing sides together. Her quiet comments had prevented countless arguments from becoming serious conflicts. She had been guiding council discussions so smoothly that no one had noticed her doing it. Without human influence, the council was reverting to the old patterns of rivalry and distrust that had plagued the galaxy before first contact with Earth. The signs were everywhere for those who knew how to look. The mining disaster on Kepler 7 was just the beginning. Medical research programs were stalling as scientists struggled with technologies they didn't fully understand. Pirate attacks were increasing along trade routes that had been safe for decades, and in the dark spaces beyond the rim, the Void Reapers were building their strength for a full invasion. The humans had been gone for only 6 months, but already the galaxy was starting to unravel. The worst part was that most beings didn't even realize what was happening. They saw isolated problems, random accidents, ordinary challenges. Only a few individuals like Dr. Yiltar and General Thictar were beginning to understand the truth. Humanity hadn't just been another member species of the Galactic Council. 2 years had passed since the humans disappeared behind their glowing barrier, and the galaxy was falling apart. Ambassador Seklos of the Drakmari Union stood before a massive holographic display in her private office. The display showed trade routes throughout council space, with different colored lines representing the flow of goods between star systems. 2 years ago, those lines had been bright and numerous, showing a healthy galactic economy. Now, most of them were dark. The Keth trade lanes had been the backbone of galactic commerce for over a century. These ancient routes connected the major systems, allowing ships to travel safely between worlds. They had been maintained by a partnership between humans and the insect-like Catharians, with human patrol ships providing security, while Catharian engineers maintained the navigation beacons. When the humans left, the Catharians had tried to continue alone. They were excellent engineers, but they were not warriors. Within months, pirates had moved into the lanes like predators sensing weakness. Seklos touched a control, and the display zoomed in on the outer spiral routes. Red warning symbols marked dozens of locations where merchant ships had been attacked in recent weeks. The pirates were getting bolder, hitting larger convoys and taking greater risks. Captain Veltar, she called to her aide, a younger Drakmari with bright green scales. What's the latest report from the Centauri Express? The captain's scales darkened with worry. Lost with all hands, Ambassador. The pirates used some kind of new weapon that disabled their shields instantly. The crew never had a chance to send a distress signal. Seklos hissed softly through her teeth. The Centauri Express had been carrying medical supplies to 3 different worlds. Without those shipments, thousands of beings would suffer from preventable diseases. But the trade route problems were just the beginning. Seklos had been conducting a secret investigation for months, digging through old records and analyzing patterns that most beings ignored. What she had discovered was terrifying. She touched another control and the display changed to show a timeline of major galactic events over the past century. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, political crises, all marked in different colors. Computer. Highlight all events that were resolved through apparently coincidental human intervention. The display exploded with light as hundreds of markers turned bright blue. Seklos stared at the pattern with growing horror. It was everywhere. The Vorthon plague of 2387 had threatened to wipe out entire species before mysteriously burning itself out. The record showed that human medical teams had been working in the affected regions at exactly the right time, conducting routine health surveys that had somehow led to breakthrough treatments. The Great Famine of 2391 had been solved when human agricultural experts made accidental discoveries about soil chemistry. While visiting affected worlds, their innovations had saved billions of lives. The stellar cascade in the Proxima sector should have destroyed 3 star systems when an ancient alien weapon malfunctioned. Human engineers had coincidentally been conducting maintenance on nearby space stations, and their routine repairs had somehow prevented the disaster. Over and over again, the pattern repeated. Whenever the galaxy faced a crisis, humans had been in exactly the right place at exactly the right time with exactly the right solution, and every time they had made it look like an accident or a lucky coincidence. Seklos realized with growing dread that humanity had been secretly protecting the galaxy for over a century. They had been fighting threats that other species never even knew existed, preventing disasters before they could happen, maintaining a careful balance of power that kept the peace. She opened a secure communication channel to Dr. Yiltar on Rigel Prime. The Nexari scientist had been conducting her own investigation into human activities. "Doctor," Seklos said when the connection established, "I need to share some disturbing findings with you." Dr. Yiltar's large black eyes reflected worry. "Ambassador, I was about to contact you with similar concerns. I've been analyzing human intervention patterns and the data is troubling." "How troubling?" "According to my calculations, humanity prevented an average of 15 major galactic crises per year. Wars that never started because human diplomats guided negotiations. Plagues that never spread because human medical teams were somehow always ready with treatments. Economic collapses that never happened because human advisors made key suggestions at crucial moments." Seklos felt her scales turn cold. 15 per year? For how long? Over a century. "Ambassador, without human intervention, the galaxy should have destroyed itself decades ago." Before Seklos could respond, another communication signal came through. This one was from General Thiktar on the Rimworlds, and it was marked as an emergency. "Ambassador, Doctor," the Thakari commander said urgently. "We have a situation. The Void Reapers have broken through our outer defenses. They're heading for the core systems with a fleet larger than anything we've seen in recorded history." The display in Seklos' office automatically updated to show the tactical situation. Hundreds of black ships were moving through space in perfect formation, sweeping aside Thakari defenders like leaves in a storm. "How many ships?" Dr. Yiltar asked. "Over 3,000, General Thiktar replied grimly. "And they're using technology that we don't understand. Our weapons barely scratch their hulls. Their ships seem to repair themselves between battles." Seklos studied the tactical display with growing alarm. "General, according to our historical records, the Void Reapers never fielded more than a few hundred ships in past invasions." "How did they build such a massive fleet?" "That's just it," the general replied. "I don't think they built it. I think they've been building it for decades, hidden somewhere in the dark spaces beyond the rim. The humans must have been keeping them bottled up out there, preventing them from gathering their full strength." The implications hit all 3 of them at the same time. For generations, humanity had been fighting a secret war against the galaxy's most dangerous enemy. They had been keeping the Void Reapers scattered and weak, never allowing them to unite into a single overwhelming force. Now, with the humans gone, the Reapers had finally been able to gather their full strength. They were coming for revenge. "There's more," General Thiktar continued. "I've been analyzing the patterns of their attacks. They're not just randomly destroying things. They're specifically targeting infrastructure that humans helped build. It's like they know exactly which systems were dependent on human support." Dr. Yiltar's voice was barely a whisper. "They're dismantling humanity's protective network piece by piece." The 3 officials sat in stunned silence for a moment, absorbing the full scope of the disaster. The galaxy was under attack by an enemy that had been kept in check for decades, by a species that everyone had taken for granted. but the crisis was about to get worse. Over the next few days, reports poured in from across Council space. The Nexari Collective had begun developing experimental weapons in secret, apparently believing that military superiority was their only hope for survival. The Zephyrian Empire had mobilized its entire fleet and was making territorial demands on neighboring systems. 3 minor species had declared independence from Council authority and were forming their own defensive alliances. The careful balance of power that had maintained galactic peace was collapsing faster than anyone could have imagined. Chairman Vextar called emergency session after emergency session, but the Council had become paralyzed. Without human diplomats to guide negotiations and find compromises, every discussion devolved into arguments. Species that had been allies for generations were now viewing each other with suspicion and fear. Seklos found herself thinking about all the times she had watched human ambassadors work. They had seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable. They rarely gave dramatic speeches or made bold proposals. Instead, they would listen carefully, ask quiet questions, and suggest small modifications to other species' ideas. At the time, it had seemed like humans were just following everyone else's lead. Now she realized they had been doing the opposite. They had been carefully steering every negotiation, guiding every decision, shaping every compromise. They had been leading the galaxy so subtly that no one had noticed. The humans had been the galaxy's invisible government, and no one had even realized it. As reports of the spreading chaos continued to arrive, Seklos made a decision that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. She began drafting a proposal for the Council to formally surrender to humanity and beg for their return. But first, she had to find a way to contact them through that mysterious barrier around Earth, and she had to hope that the humans would be willing to save a galaxy that had never appreciated what they had done in the first place. The price of ignorance was becoming clear. The galaxy had taken humanity's protection for granted for so long that most beings had forgotten it was protection at all. Now they were about to learn what the universe was really like without humanity's guiding hand. 5 years had passed since humanity's quiet departure, and half the galaxy was burning. The war between the Nexari Collective and the Zephyrian Empire had consumed 14 star systems. Billions of beings had died in the fighting, and billions more had become refugees fleeing the destruction. What had started as a dispute over mining rights had escalated into a total war that neither side seemed able to stop. On the bridge of the Drakmari diplomatic vessel, Harmony's Voice, Ambassador Seklos watched the tactical display with sick fascination. Red zones marked active combat areas, yellow zones showed refugee camps, and black zones indicated systems that had been completely destroyed. But the war between the Nexari and Zephyrians was not the only crisis facing the galaxy. The Void Reapers had swept through the Thakari Federation like a plague of darkness. General Thiktar and his brave defenders had fought to the last ship, but they had been overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. The Reapers now controlled everything beyond the Middle Rim, and they were pushing steadily toward the galactic core. Even worse, new threats were emerging from the chaos. Plague ships drifted between systems carrying diseases that no one knew how to cure. Pirate fleets had grown so large that they were challenging government forces for control of entire sectors. Economic collapse had left whole civilizations unable to feed their populations. The Galactic Council still existed, but barely. Only half the original member species still attended meetings, and those who came spent more time arguing than solving problems. Chairman Vextar had aged years in the past few months, his bright golden feathers now dull and gray with stress. "Ambassador Seklos," he said wearily as she entered the council chambers, "do you have any good news to report?" Seklos settled into her seat, her green scales dark with exhaustion. "I'm afraid not, Chairman. The refugee situation in the outer colonies has become critical. We have over 2 billion beings living in temporary camps without adequate food or medical supplies. And the Reaper advance? They've taken the Altair system. Our intelligence suggests they'll reach the core worlds within 6 months." Chairman Vextar closed his eyes in despair. Around the chamber, the remaining council members sat in dejected silence. Once, this room had been filled with the energy of hundreds of species working together. Now it felt like a tomb. Dr. Yiltar, who had been given a special advisory position due to her research, stood up slowly. Chairman, I believe it's time to implement the final option. Every head in the chamber turned toward her. They all knew what she meant. For months, Dr. Yiltar and Ambassador Seklos had been working on a desperate plan. It was humiliating, but it might be their only hope for survival. Are you certain the barrier can be breached? Chairman Vextar asked. Not breached, Dr. Yiltar corrected. Approached. Our analysis suggests that the human defensive field will allow peaceful contact attempts. The question is whether they'll be willing to listen. Seklos stood as well. Chairman, I volunteer to lead the mission. Dr. Yiltar and I have studied humanity's patterns longer than anyone else. If there's a chance of success, we're the ones most likely to achieve it. The vote was unanimous. Within days, a small diplomatic fleet was assembled for the most important mission in galactic history. The ships were lightly armed and carried only a skeleton crew. Everything about the expedition was designed to appear as non-threatening as possible. The journey to Sol system took 2 weeks. As they approached the glowing barrier around Earth's solar system, Seklos felt her scales tingle with nervous energy. They had no idea what they would find on the other side. Ambassador, her communications officer, reported, "We're being scanned by unknown technology. The scan patterns are unusual." Unusual how? They seem to be analyzing our intentions rather than our capabilities. I've never seen anything like it. Before Seklos could respond, a new voice came through the communication system. It was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. Galactic Council vessel Harmony's voice. This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Terran Defense Force. State your purpose. Seklos felt a surge of hope. The humans were still there, and they were willing to communicate. Captain Martinez, this is Ambassador Seklos of the Drekmari Union, representing the Galactic Council. We request permission to meet and discuss matters of critical importance to all galactic civilizations. There was a long pause. Ambassador, you may approach Station Haven at the edge of our system. A single ship only with minimal escort. Any aggressive action will result in immediate termination of contact. Station Haven turned out to be a small, elegant structure positioned just inside the barrier. As their shuttle approached, Seklos was amazed by the design. The station looked nothing like the utilitarian human buildings she remembered. This structure was beautiful, with flowing lines and crystalline surfaces that seemed to bend light in impossible ways. The docking bay was equally impressive. Human technology had clearly advanced far beyond anything the Council species possessed. The walls seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that adapted to their presence, providing perfect atmospheric conditions without any visible machinery. Captain Martinez was waiting for them in the station's main conference room. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and kind eyes, wearing a uniform that seemed both simple and sophisticated. Behind her stood 2 advisors, and in the corner sat a familiar figure. Ambassador Chen Wei, Seklos said with surprise. The former human ambassador smiled slightly. Hello, Seklos. It's good to see you again. Captain Martinez gestured for them to sit at a round table that seemed to be carved from a single piece of crystal. Ambassador Seklos, Dr. Yiltar, you've traveled a long way to see us. Please tell us what brings you here. Seklos had prepared a careful speech during the journey, but faced with these calm, confident humans, she found herself abandoning her planned words. Captain, we've come to surrender. Captain Martinez raised an eyebrow. Surrender? The galaxy is dying, Dr. Yiltar said quietly. Wars, plagues, economic collapse, the Void Reaper invasion. We've lost control of everything. Billions are dead and billions more will die unless something changes. Seklos leaned forward. We know the truth now. We know what humanity was doing all those years. You were protecting us, guiding us, keeping us safe. We were too blind to see it, too proud to acknowledge it. We offer complete autonomy within any new council structure, Dr. Yiltar continued. Humanity can have whatever worlds you want, whatever resources you need. You can lead the galaxy openly instead of from the shadows. Just please help us save what's left. Captain Martinez listened to their pleas with a patient expression. When they finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Ambassador Seklos, Dr. Yiltar, I appreciate your honesty, but I have a question for you. She leaned back in her chair. Why should we return to serve those who never acknowledged our service? The words hit Seklos like a physical blow. She realized that all their offers of territory and resources missed the point completely. The humans didn't want rewards or recognition. They wanted something much simpler and much more important. You knew, Seklos whispered. All along you knew what you were doing for us. Ambassador Chenwei nodded. We knew. Every crisis we prevented, every war we stopped before it started, every life we saved through quiet intervention. We knew, and we waited for someone else to notice. But no one ever did, Captain Martinez added. For over a century, humanity provided the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. And in return we were given token positions and marginal influence while other species took credit for our work. Dr. Yiltar's large eyes reflected shame. We treated you like servants instead of partners. Yes, Chenwei said simply. You did. The conference room fell silent. Outside the windows, Seklos could see the blue glow of Earth's barrier, and beyond that, the stars where war and chaos were consuming everything she had ever known. Finally, Captain Martinez spoke again. We'll consider selective assistance for species that treated us with respect. But we will not return to the Council. That organization proved its inability to value genuine partnership. She stood up and the meeting was clearly over. We'll be in touch with our decision within 10 days. Until then, you're welcome to remain at Station Haven as our guests. As the humans left the conference room, Seklos felt the weight of her species' failures pressing down on her. They had come here hoping to bargain their way back to humanity's protection. Instead, they had been forced to confront the full scope of their own blindness and ingratitude. The galaxy would have to wait and hope that humanity's mercy was greater than their pride. 10 days later, Ambassador Seklos and Dr. Yiltar were called back to the conference room on Station Haven. During their wait, they had been treated with perfect courtesy by the human staff, but they had also been shown just how far humanity had advanced during their 5 years of isolation. The station's walls displayed images from around the Sol system, showing construction projects that defied imagination. Massive ring structures surrounded several planets, harvesting energy on a scale that made galactic civilization look primitive. Ships moved through space without visible engines, bending reality itself to achieve impossible speeds. Most shocking of all were the other humans they glimpsed in the corridors. Some looked normal, but others seemed to have been enhanced in ways that were hard to understand. They moved with perfect grace. Their eyes held depths of intelligence that seemed almost alien, and they spoke in harmonious tones that suggested their minds were connected in ways that individual consciousness could not achieve. Humanity had not been sitting idle behind their barrier. They had been evolving. Captain Martinez was waiting for them in the conference room, along with Ambassador Chenwei and several other humans that Seklos didn't recognize. The captain's expression was serious but not unkind. Ambassador Seklos, Dr. Yiltar, thank you for your patience. We have reached our decision. Seklos felt her scales tighten with nervousness. Everything depended on the next few minutes. First, Captain Martinez continued, humanity will not return to the Galactic Council. That organization has proven incapable of recognizing or valuing genuine partnership. It will be allowed to collapse naturally. Dr. Yiltar's shoulders slumped with disappointment, but Captain Martinez held up a hand. However, we are willing to establish individual relationships with species that demonstrated respect for humanity during our time in the Council. These relationships will be based on mutual benefit and genuine equality, not on the patron-client dynamic that the Council preferred. She activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Several systems were highlighted in blue. The Catharians honored their partnerships with us and shared credit for joint achievements. They will receive continued technological and military support. The Drakmari consistently defended human proposals in council sessions and treated our representatives with dignity. We offer them a full alliance, including access to our most advanced technologies. Seklos felt a surge of hope. Her species would survive. A few other minor species showed similar respect and will receive appropriate assistance, but the Zephyrian Empire and Nexeri Collective, who were the primary architects of humanity's marginalization, are excluded from all future cooperation. What about the Void Reapers? Dr. Yiltar asked urgently. They're threatening the entire galaxy. Ambassador Chenwei spoke for the first time. The Reapers will be dealt with, but not in the way you expect. The holographic display changed to show the dark regions beyond the galactic rim, where the Reaper fleets were massing for their final assault on the core worlds. Suddenly, new contacts appeared on the display, hundreds of them moving at incredible speeds. Human vessels, Captain Martinez explained. We've been tracking the Reapers since they began their current offensive. They're not the unstoppable force they appear to be. Seklos watched in amazement as the human ships engaged the Reaper fleet. The battle was unlike anything she had ever seen. The human vessels seemed to phase in and out of normal space, appearing behind Reaper ships and disabling them with weapons that left no visible damage. Within hours, the entire Reaper fleet had been neutralized. Not destroyed, simply stopped. Their ships hung motionless in space, crews alive but unable to move. "We've been studying the Reapers for decades," Chenwei explained. "They're not evil in the way other species understand evil. They're a hive mind that became corrupted by isolation and fear. Rather than destroy them, we've chosen to heal them." "Heal them?" Seklos asked in disbelief. "Their consciousness has been cleansed of the corruption that drove them to violence. They're being relocated to empty regions of space where they can rebuild their civilization without threatening others. In time, they may even become valuable members of the galactic community." Dr. Yiltar stared at the display. "You could have done this at any time. Why wait until now?" Captain Martinez's expression grew serious. "Because the galaxy needed to learn what the universe was really like without our protection. You needed to understand the true cost of taking essential partnerships for granted." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "For over a century, humanity provided invisible leadership for galactic civilization. We prevented wars, cured plagues, managed economic stability, and protected everyone from external threats. We did this because we believed in the potential for a truly cooperative galactic society. But the other species never saw us as partners," Chenwei added. "They saw us as useful servants. Our contributions were ignored or credited to others. Our proposals were dismissed until other species suggested the same ideas. We were given token positions while real authority remained with species that considered themselves superior." Seklos felt shame burning through her scales. Every word was true. "The final insult," Captain Martinez continued, "was being excluded from the decisions that would shape the galaxy's future. The Council made critical choices about trade, territory, and technology, without consulting the species that was actually maintaining galactic stability." She turned back to face them. "So we left. Not in anger, but in disappointment. We gave the galaxy a chance to prove that it could function as a true partnership of equals. Instead, it reverted to the same patterns of rivalry and conflict that had plagued it before human contact." The holographic display changed again, showing the current state of the galaxy. The war zones were already beginning to stabilize as human intervention eliminated the underlying causes of conflict. The Nexari and Zephyrian fleets found their weapons mysteriously malfunctioning whenever they tried to attack civilian targets. Plague ships were being intercepted and their diseases cured before they could spread. But the most dramatic change was happening to the aggressive fleets themselves. Rather than being destroyed, they were simply relocated. Entire battle groups found themselves transported to uninhabited systems with enough supplies to survive but no way to return to inhabited space. The Zephyrian and Nexari leadership will have time to consider their actions, Captain Martinez explained. When they're ready to embrace genuine cooperation instead of domination, they can send a message. We'll be listening. Seklos realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity had the power to crush their enemies but chose instead to educate them. They could have demanded submission but offered partnership to those who had earned it. "What happens now?" she asked. Chenwei smiled. "Now we build something better. The species that have earned our respect will help us create a new model for galactic civilization. One based on actual equality and mutual benefit, not the bureaucratic hierarchy that the Council represented." "And humanity?" Dr. Yiltar asked. "What's your role in this new order?" "We'll be what we always were," Captain Martinez replied. "Partners, advisors, and protectors, but this time we'll do it openly, with species that truly understand the value of cooperation." She gestured toward the window, where the Sol system's magnificent structures gleamed in the starlight. "We've spent 5 years advancing beyond what we thought possible. Now we're ready to share that advancement with those who have proven worthy of trust." The meeting ended with formal agreements being signed between humanity and each of the worthy species. Trade compacts, technology sharing arrangements, mutual defense treaties, all based on principles of genuine equality that the old council had never achieved. As Seklos prepared to return to her ship, she reflected on the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. Power without wisdom led to tyranny. Wisdom without acknowledgement led to resentment. But power combined with wisdom and tempered by justice could create something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The humans had exited quietly, leaving the galaxy to face the consequences of its own choices. But they had not abandoned it entirely. Instead, they had given it a chance to grow, to learn, and to become worthy of the partnership they offered. Some species had failed that test and would have to live with the consequences. Others had passed and would help build a better future. Humanity had always been ready to guide the galaxy towards something greater. Now finally they had partners who understood what that guidance was worth. The galaxy would never again take its guardians for granted. The price of that mistake had been too high, and the memory of these dark years would serve as a reminder for generations to come. In the end, the humans had taught the galaxy the most important lesson of all, that true strength lay not in demanding respect, but in earning it through service, sacrifice, and quiet competence. And when that service was finally acknowledged and valued, the rewards were beyond anything that force alone could achieve.